Hey everybody, so just got back from a week at the beach, actually, or almost a week, with my Oura Ring 4, which, as if you guys have seen the previous videos, you knew I had some problems with. I did do a quick unboxing and impressions video, which kind of goes through my initial kind of thoughts on taking it out of the box and how it looked and how it felt and that sort of thing, weighing it, which I did find a few surprises in that, but for the most part, I was overall fairly impressed with the build. I did like the new charger. The battery life promises were interesting to me, and I'll talk about those in a minute because I'm going to give some updates on my initial use after about it's been a week solid, I guess, at this point. And I did get a full recharge in there, so I know exactly how long it lasts. But the biggest concern everybody has had has been my short that I posted about how this O-ring has come out, or did come out, while I was washing dishes. I wasn't using very hot water. It was just, mostly kind of pretty warm water, I guess you'd say. It was approaching hot, but not quite hot. And of course, the documentation for this ring says pretty clearly that you can do anything with it. You can be in a sauna, you can be in a hot tub, you can be in a shower, in the ring. You don't have to worry about taking it off for those things. And you can even expose it to temperatures approaching 140 degrees. But if you exceed that for any significant period of time, it says that it could have a problem with battery, which of course is not what my problem was. It was this white O-ring. Can you see the O-ring here? There is an O-ring on each side of this ring. And as it turns out, and I'll give an update more in depth here in a moment on this topic, but there are O-rings on all of the Oura Ring 4s. It is part of the design. It may not be obvious based on the color and the matching of the O-ring color to the actual body of the ring. But one of the things they've changed is that rather than have an epoxy interior like on the Oura Ring 3, both Horizon and Heritage models, the Oura Ring 4 has titanium on the outside and the inside. So that sounds really cool, and it is a neat idea, for allergy purposes, maybe for durability to some degree, probably for comfort also. And these nubs are missing, and that definitely makes a difference on comfort. I'll say that's a positive. I've noticed after a week it does feel a little bit more comfortable on the hand, I think, even though it seems pretty thick still and a little bit heavier noticeably than my previous Stealth Oura Ring 3. It is definitely heavier, by the way. I weighed it, and the surprise I found in the previous video was it was roughly 30% heavier. But the O-Ring is a new addition. It's something that did not exist on the Oura Ring 3, and I do think it is probably a negative. I think it's probably a design negative, a net negative in terms of durability. It does concern me with waterproofing and things like that to some degree. But some interesting notes here about this. So after I had this problem and I posted that short last week, or engineering actually reached out to me. One of the people at the top of the department reached out to me and spoke to me for about 15 minutes on the phone. It was very nice of them to do that on a Saturday evening, by the way. He called me from his cell phone to my cell phone, which was pretty cool. And we talked for a little while, and I texted him, my thoughts on which size I wanted to replace it with, which, by the way, was the same size. Ultimately, I went with another 10, which is exactly the same as what I had previously. But let me talk about what's currently going on here. So, has the O-ring come back out on me since I popped it back in? No, it hasn't. That shouldn't make you feel any better necessarily about it, but it is interesting to me that it came out so easily and went back in so easily, and it's remained in there. So it does appear to be lodged in pretty well. But some other things that may not be quite so obvious here. Oh, and by the way, they did replace the ring. That's why I have this second one here. The first one, I want to talk to you about this because this is a topic I saw discussed on the internet some. This ring was actually manufactured in Estonia. So some people mentioned that they thought perhaps the problem was the movement of the manufacturing, the migration to Mexico. Well, it's not, because this ring that had the problem was actually made in Estonia. The second ring that they replaced it with, interestingly enough, came from Mexico. So whether or not it is rings exclusively from Estonia that have had issues with the O-ring, with the gasket, I'm not sure. That time will tell, I guess, on that, based on Reddit posts and social responses to the situation. And I don't know how widespread this even is. Aura seemed to think it was not very widespread when they spoke to me, but that could have changed by now. We have had at least several people report they've had similar issues. A couple of them were washing dishes, which is interesting. I'm not sure how exactly that factors in. But definitely this is, not just me. There are other people who have had this problem. But let's talk about some other things too here. So I did spend a week on the beach with this ring. I was wondering how it would hold up because the stealth finish on the previous ring, as I mentioned, does, I mean, first of all, it's very durable, but it scratches literally everything it comes into contact with, including my phone screen and other things like metal, like the metal on my refrigerator. Actually, my GE refrigerator, it has scratched many things, and I was not a fan of that. So I decided to change the ring finish I went with on the 4 from the 3 to this brushed silver, which has a different finish on it. And I was worried about durability. But as you can see, and if I can rotate this, I'm not sure how easily you can tell, there are some minor scuffs and scratches after being in the sand playing with my kids for almost an entire 4 days. But it's nothing really egregious. And of course, you'd expect some scratches and scuffs. I mean, obviously, I've got a ring here. This is white gold, so it's softer than titanium and whatever finish they put on this, which I think is PVD, if I'm not mistaken, or something of that nature. I can't recall. But anyway, it's definitely pretty durable. So I think this thing will hold up from a finish standpoint. I think the silver does mask the scratches pretty well, and it's going to look kind of organic anyway after, say, several months of use and wear. So I'm not too concerned about that. I'm going to wear it like a normal ring. Maybe I'll take it off when weightlifting. We'll see how that goes, or I'll switch it to my middle finger on this hand. As you probably noticed, I did stick with size 10, and I did keep it on my index finger. I discovered that was the most comfortable place to have it. Other notes, let's talk about battery life and performance. So first of all, just initial thoughts on this. Performance seems roughly equivalent to the Oura Ring 3, although I will mention that there have been fewer gaps in my nighttime activities. So stuff like my nighttime heart rate, the heart rate readings, and the HRV. Definitely not as many gaps in that. The sleep tracking seems on point. I'm very happy with that. It is, like I said, a little bit more comfortable. I think it feels ever so slightly larger. Engineering confirmed to me that they are ever so slightly larger, in fact. So you do have to resize, or at least check your size again. They, again, do not have half sizes. I kind of wish they did, because I would have gotten probably with a 9.5 if they had that available. But I understand why they don't, because they have to manufacture so many different rings. Battery life, though. And I do want to mention this, they quote up to 8 days, just like they quoted a lower weight, which frankly is just not true unless there's a difference in finishes substantially in weight. The weight is actually 30%, I think it is, greater on the 4 than it was on the 3 for me. Same size, different finish, but whatever. So that, you get used to that pretty quickly. Obviously, it's still lighter than this one. If you saw my first video, you'll see where I weighed everything and responded to that. But the battery life, they quote at up to 8 days. I have the same size ring as I did previously. I wore the Oura Ring 3 for 2 straight years, the Horizon model, the Heritage model before that for 1 year. That ring lasted me on average 5 to 6 days. I think it was closer to 5 days. Without having to charge. Usually I would charge every 5 nights, or once every 5 nights while I was in the shower or something. I would put it on the charger and leave it on there for about an hour, and then we'd be good to go for the next 5 days. Well, unfortunately, this ring is not doing much better than that. I would actually venture to say that so far battery life is equivalent to the Oura Ring 3. It may be ever so slightly better, and when I say slightly better, I mean like 5%, 10% at most, probably better. That may be partially also due just to battery degradation over 2 years of lithium-ion charging and discharging, recharging for 2 straight years. So keep in mind there's some of that at play too, and I can't remember exactly how good the battery life was when I first got the ring. Although I will say I don't think it's ever been more than 5-6 days max on the Oura Ring 3. I did have blood ox sensing turned on this week while I was using this thing. So there's that. I mean, that does reduce battery life slightly. I'm not sure how much it actually matters. I will turn that off for the next week and check it and see how that goes. But other than that, and the fact that the stamping interior to this, the laser etching, appears to be a little bit different. I mean, obviously they're made in different areas, so that's not surprising. But this one here is a little bit thinner in terms of the etching. Really nothing else about these feels much different, although I will say I think the Mexican-made model has a slightly sharper edge here. And again, that may just be the way they've secured these parts together, the way the O-ring is inserted. I don't really know. That may be good, that may be bad. Who knows? You don't really notice it when you're wearing it, so who really cares? You can analyze this stuff to death, and it probably doesn't make a difference ultimately. So I'm going to have to wear this a little bit longer before I give you more impressions on it. But I will be sending this ring back to engineering for analysis as they requested. And they're going to take a look at that. Hopefully this issue is something that can nip in the bud pretty quickly without having to replace, tens of thousands of rings or something like that under warranty. Overall, quite happy with how this thing feels. Performance is good. If it stays together, it's going to be a great product to have. If it doesn't, well, we'll come back to that and discuss that at a later date. So thank you again for watching my videos. I hope you stick around. I'm going to have lots more interesting stuff, not just on the Oura Ring, but many other things. But I will certainly come back to you with more on this, and we'll talk more about what I like and dislike at a later date after I've had more time to mess with it. So thanks again.